Once upon a time in the sewer, there were 4 cute little turtles.
Who suddenly went through this incredible mutation process and became the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
And then there was a sweet, charming rock musician.
Who goes out of control, changes and mutates into bebop.
Oh, my. Look, they've decided to play together. And of course, they all live happily ever after.
Now they
Fun playmates.
What is it?
It's time to go back.
Welcome.
Hey there, welcome back, and happy holidays. It's Generation S, a podcast about growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s. I will put it to you this way. If the topic of discussion today is a toy that you held near and dear to your heart in the 90s, this podcast is for you. I'm Dan Kemp, joined once again by Generation S first ballot Hall of Famer, Lou Carnevale.
Not only is the figure potentially held near and dear to your heart, maybe your parents said, well, maybe we should get 2 to hang on to it just in case it's worth money.
They never did. My parents never did that. Did yours?
Oh, my dad did. Yes.
No, my parents never. Like, there's so many toys of mine that have been thrown away over the years that I guarantee you were at least worth something that they just threw away. So
yeah, my parents didn't I didn't throw away anything, and they would buy some duplicates if they thought it was going to be worth money down the road.
I think the difference is the whole only child versus like multi-child household, because like
True.
They're going to hold on to your stuff, whereas mine, they would have to hold on to 4 kids worth of stuff, and they were not about to do that. So
yes,
like their mentality was
that.
like, get it out of the house as soon as possible. I remember, it's funny because like as a little kid, we would have tubs and tubs of action figures. And by the time I was, I don't know, probably like almost a teenager where I really wasn't playing with them anymore, my little brother was, but like it had dwindled down to like 1 tub of toys, like that we'd thrown them out or lost them, whatever. It's crazy how quickly it dwindled, you know what I mean? And so, anyway, in case you couldn't tell, we are talking all about action figures today, folks. So my favorite form of toy for many years, as it was yours, I believe, right? Like action figures were the thing, like for birthdays, Christmases, whatever. And so
absolutely.
I figured for the holiday season, right? You know, we're talking all about toys, and I definitely want to do like other 90s toys in the future, but I wanted to focus specifically today on action figures because for me, again, I don't know if it's because I was a boy or what, but action figures were my, like, I didn't care what toy line it was from. If I got action figures for a holiday, it was a good time. So, and like to the point where like, yeah, I mean, I had the classics like the Ninja Turtle toys and the Power Rangers and stuff like that, but I also had some weird ones where I'd never heard of the figure line, but I didn't care because the figure looked really cool and it would fit in with whatever storyline I was doing, or I wouldn't have called it a storyline back then, but you know, a story, right? What about you? Is that similar to kind of your experience with action figures in general?
Yeah, I had the main ones: Turtles, Power Rangers, Ghostbusters, more wrestling figures I could possibly ever imagine.
Yeah.
But like you, these weird things would pop up that they were the flavor of the month, or if you saved your allowance and you went to more likely KB and Biker Mike's from Mars was on sale for $1, you would get that figure and be like, oh, I could use him for something. That'd be cool. He looks like a Ninja Turtle villain or something like that.
Well, and you know what I loved?
Your imagination.
Well, that's exactly right. And you know what I loved is when you would buy toys from the same maker. They were usually the same scale, right? So I'll give you an example.
Yes.
You had the Turtle toys, right, made by Playmates. There was another animated series that actually made it to my Ninja Turtles knockoff video on YouTube, which, by the way, you should go check out our channel, Generation S Podcast on YouTube. Or maybe it's just Generation S, I can't remember. But I don't remember. What is it? It's Generation S, right? On YouTube?
It's at least Generation S. How's that?
Okay. Go search it. You'll find it. Anyway, that was really bad. I'm probably going to edit that out. Hold on. Let's clap real quick. Ready?
Want me to look it up?
No, I'm just going to totally just say, go check us out on YouTube and then move on. Anyway. So, okay. Where was it? Okay. Hold on. Ready? Like, I loved it when the same toy makers would make multiple figure lines, because usually they were the same scale, right? So I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about here. There's actually a cartoon series that didn't last very long and actually made it to my a video I made for our Generation S YouTube channel. where I talked all about the top 10 Ninja Turtles knockoffs. And this was called the Cowboys of Moo Mesa. Do you remember that series or anything about them at all by chance?
Only time I ever heard of it was watching the video you made.
Oh, really? Yeah. So, like, it's one of those where, like, it was like, as soon as I saw the video on YouTube, it unlocked a weird core memory from me. Like, I remember the cartoon series, and I thought it was a dream until I saw it for real. I'm like, oh, that was a real thing. But they made toys, and Playmates made them, so they were the exact same scale as the Ninja Turtle toys. Now, I didn't happen to own any of those particular figures, but had I owned them, they would have been the same size. Like, the characters were in the same height. And that,
Yep.
I don't want to say that bothered me back in the day, but what about you? Like, if you had big size differentials, did you factor that into when you were playing with them, or did it not matter for you?
Yeah, it did. So similar, the Power Rangers were made by Bandai, and Bandai also made Superhuman Samurai and VR Troopers.
Yep.
So the Power Ranger flip head ones, which I want to say were probably 4 inches, Superhuman Samurai and VR Troopers were the same thing. So I bought more of the villains to just bring in more villains. On the flip side, no pun intended there, because I mentioned flip head.
I see.
My wrestling figures were all across the board. So I had like the WWF ones, which were like that, around that 4 inches.
Yep.
WCW was like all over the place. Sometimes they were the same size. Sometimes they were bigger. If they were too big, I couldn't use them. And then ECW was the same size kind of towards when I stopped playing with them. But I remember watching a show, and if you're listening to this or watching this, you definitely have heard about this show, The Toys That Made Us. And the interesting things is there was it was a wrestling episode, and the guy that it was the original San Francisco toy makers. And he got the ECW license, and he said, I wanted to make our figures the same size as the WWF ones. That way people would buy our figures to use with the WWF figures. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, no, and they still do that now, and I think so. There are people that collect wrestling figures now, like grown people like us, that will collect the figures still. And it's Mattel that makes them now, right?
Correct. It's Mattel that makes the WWE, and I believe it's Jax who made the WWF figures when we were probably in middle school.
Yeah, it was like the Attitude Era figures.
Yeah, the Attitude Era was Jax. They make the AEW figures, and even before them was the Hasbros, which are worth a lot of money.
Absolutely, they are. So, but my point is, with Mattel making them, they set the standard. So any figures they make now, like, and have since they started, are all to scale. So, like, if you're playing with an Andre the Giant Legends figure against a Rey Mysterio, I mean, there's a real height differential there, and it's pretty accurate. So, like, no matter what, Andre the Giant, if they make new ones, will always be that size and height. And so they made it, like I said, and then it's to scale with all the wrestling rings and everything they make. So that's pretty cool they do that now, because back in the day they didn't, and you had to. Now for wrestling it's a little different, because if they're going to fight each other, it's going to look really weird if they're supposed to be equal sized dudes in a wrestling ring, and you've got, so did you have a toy wrestling ring, by the way?
Oh yeah, I had a few.
You did? Okay. Was it a WWE one, or did they make a WC? I don't even know.
They did. I had a WWF one, which was actually, it was so massive, absolutely massive. Like the top rope, when you put the guy in the ring, the top rope was like eye level with the guy, which didn't make any sense. Then I got the WCW ring, which was great. But all 3 companies, again talking about the 90s, all 3 wrestling companies had their own figures, their own ring, and all that good stuff.
Yep, that's right. And then even now, I never owned the wrestling ring toy as a kid. A friend of mine did. So every once in a while we were probably in like 6th, 7th grade maybe, and we were still playing with wrestling figures at the time. And it was an Attitude Era WWF Raw ring. And it was like just a hard piece of play. It wasn't bouncy,
black.
It was black.
It was black, right?
It was the black ring. Yep. Did you have that
I had
one?
That.
Oh,
I had
so
that one,
good.
yes.
I thought it was so cool, and because I never played with a wrestling ring as a kid. I had some of the. Now, it's funny, my first wrestling figures I may have mentioned this on episode 1 of this podcast. I'd have to go back and listen, is I had a bunch of hand-me-down LJN rubber wrestlers. You remember those, right?
I do. Before both of our times, but I do remember those were early. I got some hand-me-downs also.
Yeah, those were like mid 80s, and so they were like, the neighbor was getting rid of them. They're like, oh, maybe little Danny wants them, right? And so I had Hulk Hogan, I had the Iron Sheik, and I had Greg the Hammer Valentine, and I had Nikolai Volkov. Those are the 4 that I had. And then years later, I finally, with the power of the internet, learned that they made a whole line of these things, and there was tons of them. Which ones did you have?
Of LJN, I literally had 2. I know I had the Iron Sheik, and I think I had Hogan.
Okay.
I think I had Hogan.
Nice.
But
they were great, man.
yeah,
'Cause those are like my
were.
go-tos to take in the bathtub for many years because they were rubber, right? They wouldn't get like
Yep.
messed up and funky. Like you could beat the crap out of them, and it was awesome.
I took my Batman toys into the water. I don't know why.
Now, which Batman toys? Like which? Let's specify here because there was a lot of Batman toys.
Yeah, probably from the movie. So Batman 89, more than likely. So if
Okay.
the movie came out in 89, I was probably 4 years old, 4 years old when you're probably still playing with toys in the bathtub. I don't know why, but I brought Batman in there.
Oh, I always brought action figures in the bathtub. Yeah. But Batman specifically.
Batman specifically, I don't know why. And ironically, one of the few collections I have ongoing is a Batman collection right now, but it's a very specific type of collection.
Gotcha. It was for the Batman Arkham series, right?
Correct. Yes. And
Yeah.
talking about making things for scale, back in the day when we were kids, I just bought Man Bat at a Comic-Con from the Arkham series, and it's massive. He's absolutely massive. Like the wingspan of him is like a whole figure. If I lay a figure down, that's his wingspan. Then the figure upright, and then another figure laying down is his other wingspan. It's like,
oh, jeez,
it's absolutely massive. And when we were kids, it was just here's Man Bat, and his arms are a little bit bigger than everybody else's. That was it.
Right.
But now it's just like ridiculously big.
Yeah, no, I remember that. And so the Batman figures I owned, because I didn't have the 89. I don't even think I had the Batman Returns figures, to be honest with you. I had the McDonald's toys, but that's a totally different episode.
Yep.
I had Batman Forever figures. I remember I specifically got those for a birthday. And
I did
my
too.
favorite one, you did too, yes. And again, I think on our Batman episode, I think I talked about this, but I had a Two-Face action figure that came with a coin that had the scratches on the one side. It was a metal coin, and it was at the cool.
Yep.
I held onto that coin for years. Like I'm talking into college, I still had that sitting in my drawer by my bed.
Really? Okay, that's cool.
It was the coolest thing. Like if I could go out, I would buy it again. I would have it on my desk. You know what I mean? Just because it's a fun little prop.
Ironically, literally as we're recording this, about 5 days ago, I got one of the more rare, because I collect the Batman Arkham verse figures. I got Two-Face, and I got them loose. And that's the thing. Now, as a collector, I have more space, and I'm settled in where I'm living, so I used to collect everything in the box as an adult collector. Now I have space to display things, but I don't have enough space to put everything in the box. So, like something like Two-Face, in the box, he's probably $50, $60, maybe even $70. I got him loose for $20.
Oh,
and he has the coin like in his hand. Like it's like it's the mold of the character has the coin in his hand. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. That is cool. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to think of other like really popular ones, because sadly I didn't do enough research. Now I did do some research because I want to talk about some kind of more obscure 90s action figure lines here in a minute. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the ones that we owned that were like, again, kind of mainstream. Sure. Let's go back to Turtle Toys for a second, because again, that was like a massive juggernaut. Everyone had them. I first got them. Yeah, I got them when I was about 3. Actually, I think going back to our Ninja Turtles episode of this podcast on episode, what was that, 2
You're going to make me put a lot of tabs in this when I'm putting it on YouTube, right? Every time you need Turtles, a tab. Watch this one. Turtles Knockoff, watch that one. Ghostbusters, watch that one.
Hey, man.
That's whatever. It's going to be a lot of tabs.
Whatever works, man. But no, because we talked about the toys, obviously, because you had to, because that was like such a big part. I think I liked the toys before I liked the cartoon, quite frankly. I had like a small surgery when I was 3, and nothing crazy. But I remember like while I was recovering, my parents went out and bought a bunch of them, and I just got really into the turtle toys. And so for many years, that was like my go-to gift, was give me Ninja Turtle stuff. And quite frankly, now at 36 years old, it's still, what does Dan want for his birthday? Get him something Ninja Turtles related.
What did I send you for your birthday?
You sent me, what did you say? Oh, you sent me that Shredder action figure. Exactly. Yes. See? So,
From the movie.
From the movie. Yes, which is my favorite movie of all time. So, I love the Turtles figure so much. I had a lot of the vehicles, but I didn't have, there were some that I definitely wish I had, like, like the holy grail for me was I always wanted a Technodrome, right? Did you have the Technodrome? You do have the Technodrome, don't you?
I do. It's in the garage in a box.
I was going to say, I saw it at your house when I went over one time. I'm pretty sure we played with the turtle toys like in college when I came over there.
Don't tell nobody. We were just doing inventory. I swear.
Oh yeah, man. So I had the Turtle Van, which I actually have again because they re-released it. So I have it upstairs I gave it to my kids, obviously, but it was really cool. Just like, it was wild how many like sensory memories just from like touching it. That sounds weird, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like if you look at something or feel something that you like, that is like the same that it was when you were a kid, so many things just flood back to you. It was wild. So like seeing these toys, because they are remaking so many of the classic Turtles figures now too. Like you can get them at Walmart and Target again. And again, seeing that to me is amazing. Cause again, I'm looking at these figures, I'm holding them in my hands, and like something's transporting me back like almost 30 years ago. And it's the wildest thing.
It is true. I've seen them. I have the original 4 and the re-releases. I wish I had the originals, and they might be on a list of most expensive toys if we go down that road. I have the 4 Turtles, Bebop, Rocksteady, and Shredder in the original packaging, and it is every time I look at them, because I have them on display in a glass cabinet. And I have a few loose ones too that weren't beat up too bad. It's all the movie Turtles, because that was probably towards the end of when I was playing with them. So those are the ones in best conditions to be on display. But there is something, and you know, to each their own. I want to put that as a disclaimer. Some people just, when they're over it, they're over, and they just move on. That's fine. To each their own. And there's some of us that, you know, either they've kept all or some, or they've repurchase some of their originals, or they gotten re-releases, and there is an attachment. But you know, there is an attachment if it's your childhood toys, and then if you repurchase them, there might be a story attached to it, where you were when you got it, or how you found it, or who you were with. You know, there's something attached to it. Like I just said, I got Man Bad at Comic-Con. There's a story attached to that. It's a long story, but it's still a story. Yeah. You know, I was with our, Dan Vorbeck, who's been on a bunch of these podcasts with us. I was with him when I got the Two-Face. There's a story attached. You know, if I see him and next time me and him go to a collectible store, oh, remember that Two-Face I got for $20? Oh man, what a deal that was. You know, but the old toys, there's something about them when you find them and you dust them off, and I really have to dust them off because they've been in storage for so long. It's fun. It really is fun.
It is, and it's what's for me as a parent now too, to be able to show my kids, like, this is what I played with back in the day. I think it's because of those old toys that I still held on to for action figures that my youngest loves playing with action figures. My oldest, not so much. Like, he's more into Legos, and which is totally cool. And like, honestly, books. He just loves to read. He loves to play with Legos. But my youngest, he loves wrestling figures. He loves action figures. I can't remember if I mentioned it, but I bought him a wrestling ring for his birthday one year, and it's the kind that bounces too. So it's got the bouncy, you know what I mean? And so he will absolutely just take out a bin of action figures and do, like, just fight with them, you know what I mean? And it's the coolest thing.
That's what I would do.
He doesn't know who half the characters are, but he loves them. And there's some that he does for sure. So actually, you know what figure line he loves to collect, if I find him for him, is the old 90s Marvel cartoon figures. Remember those? Okay. Like X-Men and Spider-Man and so, and those were all
those
scale
were great
too.
Figures also. Yeah,
yes.
those were,
They were fantastic. And actually, you know, it's really exciting. So I love, it is such a great time to be alive, and quite frankly, such a great time to have a podcast like this, because so much of what our childhood meant to us is now being thrown back out there into the world. That animated series coming to Disney Plus, X-Men 97, which is a continuation of the animated X-Men series that we loved as kids, that we talked about on a previous episode of this podcast.
Another tab I got to put in.
There it is. They're putting out those figures, though. Like, they're re-releasing the figures from that old series. I forget who made them back then, or maybe it's a different company that's making them.
I want to say Toy Wiz.
Toy Wiz or Toy Biz? I don't know. I remember it was like a red and yellow logo on the corner.
Yeah, it was Toy Wiz.
There you go. Yeah, but so it might be a different company that's putting them out, but they look very similar in size and scale, and certainly the same physical appearance as the toys, like the cartoon figures from back then, because, you know, they're based off the same cartoon animation style. But so anyway, all that to say, my son loves the Spider-Man ones in particular, and X-Men too. Like, I remember for the longest time, and I think it's because he plays the old Marvel is the Marvel superheroes, or maybe one of the X-Men, like, arcade games. He plays it out. He has one of those arcade systems. He wanted a Juggernaut figure for so long. And so we finally found him one.
Never had
from the 90s. I never had it either. Neither did I.
Yeah.
And so, it's funny too. We talk about to scale, and if you're listening to this and you're any kind of an X-Men fan, Juggernaut is this massive character, right? He's like Hulk sized, maybe bigger. The figure itself, when it came in the mail, I swear to you, it's probably the same height as the Wolverine figure he has.
Oh, really?
Which is hilarious. Nothing. Like they were all the same rough size to play with them back in the day, but they were literally all the same height. Didn't matter if it was a big character, little character. They were all the same height, which I thought was hilarious because he's cool, he's big, he's wide, but he's short. I mean, he's the same height as everyone else, which for Juggernaut is just silly.
It's built like a fire hydrant.
There it is. He's built like a fire hydrant. That's perfect. Yes, and he looked like one too because he had the helmet on his head.
There you go. And he's red.
And he's orange. He's orange or brown.
No, Juggernaut's red.
No, he's not. He's orange or brown.
What?
Look it up.
It's like a dark reddish brown.
It's like a burnt sienna. I'll give you that. Like he's a reddish brown, but emphasis
definitely
on brown.
not orange.
He's okay. He's whatever. I think he's orange. Anyway,
okay.
I digress.
To each their own. Don't steal my lines.
What other figures do we have? So it was the superheroes.
Well, I had Spider-Man. Spider-Man I liked because you mentioned the X-Men, that whole era. I didn't have the Superman, but that whole era of the animated X-Men, Spider-Man, Batman, the Superman, the Justice League, they all kind of looked like Mark McGuire.
They were the wide torsos, skinny legs.
Yes, they skipped leg day.
Yes.
Every dude was on the juice and every girl had implants. That's how we liked our action figures.
That's right, man.
That's how it was. I started to collect Simpson figures. It's very depressing when I started to collect these about a year ago, and from Playmates. Not that Playmates. Those Playmates don't even exist anymore. It's only the action figure Playmates that exist now.
That's right.
And I looked at the back of the box. It said 2000. I go, oh my God, these figures are 23 years old. That means when these came out, and this is what I'm doing now at my age. So like something that's 23 years old, I think about how old is that from 2000. So if it's 2000, it's 90, it's 80, minus another 3. So a 23-year-old toy when the Simpsons toys came out was like 1973 or something like that off the top. No, 1977.
I do the same thing where I go, okay, like let's put it in a scale of when I was a kid and I remember the year 2000. I do it with wrestling a lot, actually, where I'm like, okay, it's 2023. That means 20 years ago in 2003, you had the big Survivor Series match, the Elimination Chamber match that Shawn Michaels won the World Heavyweight Championship, or I think that's what it was. And then I'm like, okay, well, what would have been happening 20 years before that in 1983? I'm like, oh shit, that was so long ago.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now, and we're going to be releasing a show called Extreme Retrospective, which is about ECW, and I'm watching 1999 right now. I'm like, oh my God, it's 24 years ago. What's 24 years before that? I'm like, oh my God, like that's disgusting. So yeah, I'm doing that with action figures now too. Yeah,
that's wild.
Getting up there. Getting up there.
Oh man. So I remember, you were talking about like the superhero, the different figures because they made some really cool ones, really cool accessories. I remember one in particular. I got a Christmas one year, and it was I don't think I even got the figure. It was just it was a vehicle. It was a Hobgoblin. Remember Hobgoblin from Spider-Man? Not Green Goblin.
I do.
It was
Hobgoblin was yellow with an orange.
That's right.
Hood, right?
But very similar character. He threw pumpkin bombs, what have you. But he had a glider. And it was, I remember this, I didn't have the figure, but I had the glider, and it had like a handle, almost like a gun handle, for your hand. You used to like hold it and move it around. It also had wheels on it too, so you could fold up the handle and like glide it on the ground. But it came with so many different accessories and like little missiles that you could pop into it. And I remember that Christmas, I don't remember what year it was, but so vividly. That was one of the first toys I had opened. And I remember because what we would do is every Christmas we would take our toys and we would have a pile in the living room. Like, okay, this is Adam's pile, this is Dan's pile, this is Matt's pile. And we would all put our toys in that pile. And then at the end, we would bring it all to our room. And I remember bringing that toy to my room, and I played with that toy for hours I would put different figures on and try to balance it on it and try to just glide it around the room. And again, I'd never seen Hobgoblin in the show. I just thought this is a cool looking purple bat glider. And funnily enough, I never put 2 and 2 together. That would have been like a perfect thing to put Batman on, but I didn't, But so
And Star Wars 2 was another thing. I mean, there's so many.
There's
but
Star
the thing is with
Wars.
Star Wars, it was just they re-released the movies in '97, so I was still at like the right age.
Yeah.
I was 10 or 11, so still at the right age to get the toys. But it just didn't. I felt like once '97. I remember growing up, there weren't Star Wars toys on the shelf. If there were, I didn't pay attention to them because it was, like you said, Turtles, Power Rangers, wrestling, Ghostbusters when I was a really young kid. So either they weren't there or I just literally didn't pay attention to them. But I feel like once they re-released them in '97, regardless if there's a movie out or not, like they've never gone off the shelf since. 97.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree. Star Wars has been a thing. Again, talked about in our Star Wars episode when we talked about the toys. Thank you for linking that, Lou.
I have to.
You have to. You absolutely do. It's we basically talk about like once they came back in full in like '97, like they haven't stopped since for 26 years now. For better, for worse, for the record.
Yep.
But as far as the toys go, yeah, like they kind of when they brought them out back, they were kind of like an HD remake of the original '70s toys. That's probably the best way to describe it, right? Because they were the same scale, same size, but they're way more detailed. I remember the one thing that was kind of cool, and I didn't realize this because I didn't have Star Wars toys as a kid, like before the ones that came out. And I did own a few of the ones from the mid '90s, but I remember going to my grandparents' house and we were sleeping over, and they brought out my uncle's old Star Wars toys. And so I remember like he had a Luke Skywalker and a Darth Vader, and I held him up, and the Darth Vader was missing a cape, but I knew who it was because it had the helmet, and the lightsaber was in the arms. Remember that?
Yes.
So like I'm like, what is this? They're like, oh, that's this lightsaber. I'm like, that's dumb because like why is it stuck to his hand? He's not Wolverine, you know what I mean? And so you would slide it out to fight with it, and it would just hold it straight out. So
do you remember the color of Luke's lightsaber in that toy?
It was like white or something, right? It was
yellow.
Yellow. I would say I knew it was like a white or a yellow, and then which is weird because I think back in the day when those movies were first released, like if I recall, because I watched like the Betamax of the original Star Wars, that's how I saw it. It wasn't a very blue lightsaber. It was borderline white in that movie.
Yeah, when he ignites it for the first time, it's blue. But when he's on the Millennium Falcon and he's practicing, it definitely looks white.
Yeah, which I'm sure there's got to be some kind of in-universe explanation for it, right?
No, I think it's just literally it looks like shit, so just go with it.
They just ignore
been
it.
Fixed.
Oh yeah,
it's been fixed
in newer releases because they've released that movie so many goddamn times. Like now it's color corrected and whatever. But anyway, I thought that was fun that like the ones back in the day, the lightsabers didn't come out. I'm like, this is what people played with back in the '70s. This is bullshit. But then you got the ones that were like in the '90s and they had like the like actual separate lightsaber that you could put in his hand like a sword, and it was cool. So. But yeah, it's Star Wars, Star Trek. I had a few Star Trek figures actually, which were fun because like those were all over the map scale wise too. I remember I had a couple that were like, I think Playmates made them, so they were probably similar size to the Turtles figures, but they were based on the TV show Next Generation. And then they had the movie figures come out a few years later for like the Star Trek First Contact. And so I had some of those. Those are a little bit bigger, and those were fun too. I can't remember if I was using them to actually play like scenes with, or if I just thought they were cool and I displayed them. I don't remember at that point, but. Did you have any Star Trek? Or I know that was really your thing.
The dude with the visor. That's
I
never
he
watched
was
Star
cool.
Trek.
No, yeah,
Reading Rainbow. Right?
That's
Wasn't
right.
he Reading Rainbow?
LeVar Burton. There it is. Actually, I am planning on doing a Star Trek episode here. I know Beth wants to do a Star Trek episode, so we will be doing one. And I think Vorbeck would kill me if I didn't involve him in it. So.
Oh yeah, if you got to make that a two-parter, you got to bring him on for one half.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I'll try to get both of them on at the same time. I think I would.
But
love to
what
hear
would be
them.
good for that is both the ladies and a gentleman's view on Star Trek.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, and I think I'll do something like that for sure. So yeah, Star
Trek. And then
Trek.
I chime in going, I know nothing. What the hell's going on? Why aren't they fighting? Why they said diplomatic mission?
Yeah,
do something. Fire something.
I might give you like a vacation day that day or something. You can sit that one out if you need to.
I'll take it. I need some PTO.
There you go. Oh God, there's so I as we're talking, I'm picturing more action figures in my mind. You mentioned like Biker Mice from Mars. That was absolutely one that I owned. You know what I never owned actually? Another Turtles knockoff is I never had any of the Street Sharks figures. Do you remember Street Sharks?
I was just about to say that. I had a few Street Sharks.
You did?
They were cool.
Oh, yeah, I did. My friend did. I've mentioned this friend a few times, especially on the Power Rangers episodes, where he was the rich kid that had the Zords, and he had basically every toy, like every single Power Ranger toy ever. He had Street Sharks toys, and you know what he had that I loved? Do you remember those puppets, the Street Sharks puppets?
I remember it again from your show. Wasn't
From my
Vin
video.
Diesel in the commercial?
It was, yeah. Vin Diesel was in like an infomercial for him. But yeah, so like the rubber hand puppets, and they had like the hard plastic teeth, and they just looked so cool. And he had one, and it was like this. It was pretty cool. So Street Sharks were great. Oh yeah, so many.
Talking about things that you remember randomly, like I could still, if I close my eyes and think about it, I could still remember how like the rubber felt.
Yes, the texture of the toys. Yes. Oh God. And further back, even from when I was really young, I think I had like an oral fixation. So like I remember, this is going to sound weird, and I don't even know why I'm saying this on a podcast.
Yeah, why you say that? I can make that as short of just Dan going, I have an oral fixation and cut. Say everybody like that short.
I had an oral fixation.
You grew out of it. Okay, good.
I used to put a lot of my toys in my mouth as a kid. Like, I don't know, like that was just a thing. Did you do that? Okay,
sure.
So I'm the weird one. Okay, that's fine. I thought it was just me, and it turns out it's just me. So that's fine.
It's just you. Putting Street Sharks in your mouth. Hey, man.
Well, I never had Street Sharks.
You do you.
It was turtles, man. I was putting the turtle toys because, like, I don't know, the plastic felt good on my teeth. I don't know. I can't believe I just said that. I'm leaving it in. I'm owning it. It feels good. It's cathartic to get it out here 30 years later. But anyway. But you're right, though. The sensory feeling of like, I remember how this toy felt. So like you could look at a toy on a picture online or in display, like whatever, and you can go, I know what that felt like to play with that. And there's not a lot of things that you can say that about, in your life other than toys. You know what I mean? Like that's because there's such a, intimate's not the right word, but you know what I mean when I'm saying like, it's such a, like a, it's a toy. Like you play with the toy.
It's orgasmic.
I don't know.
Just get to the point. It's oral and it's euphoric and it's just oh,
shut up.
Somebody get me a towel.
So what I want to do now is I want to talk about some figure lines that were forgotten that we'll see if we can unlock some core memories here. I found a blog post. I'm going to go ahead and shout them out because I'm literally going to be looking at their list here. So it's from 90stoys.com. This is an article that came out back. Actually, looks like it was just updated last month. So we'll shout them out. 90stoys.com. Really cool. Actually, really fun website if you want to go back and kind of reminisce about old toys. So I'm going to go through some figure lines, see if you remember them. Okay.
Sure.
So first one on the list here is something called Mummies Alive. Do you remember that?
Nope, I don't.
Don't remember that. Okay. So this was it was an animated series. I think it was one of those classic, like, let's make
toys
or let's make a cartoon to sell toys. Remember like they did in the 80s? I'm pretty sure that that's the He-Man era of what have you. Yes, exactly. We didn't even talk about He-Man toys. Shit. Do we want to talk about
this? Because he's not 90s. He's not 90s.
They did make some in the 90s. I remember that. But yeah, you're right. It was kind of forgotten by then. So, okay, yeah. All right, we'll leave them in the 80s. If we ever want to do like a hand-me-downs episode, absolutely we'll talk about He-Man. So basically, it was, again, kind of capitalizing on the Ninja Turtles hype with these, like, crime-fighting mummies. Like, there's an evil wizard. It takes place in San Francisco, and, yeah.
What are they called again?
Mummies Alive.
Full disclosure, we did not. And we try to do things organically. I have no idea that he was bringing any of these up, so I have no idea. He may rattle off 10. I might not know 9 out of the 10. But as he's talking, I'm bringing them up on my phone to look up Mummies Alive.
Yes,
animated
and let me know
series.
if it triggers something for you. Maybe you saw them on the shelf, because that was we did that back in the day. We would see toys on the shelf that we never would have owned, and probably they did not own, but there were these obscure toy lines that just didn't take off, and so this was one of them. The show only ran for one. Yeah, they are very cool looking. The show only ran for one season, but and I'm pretty sure you can watch it all on YouTube. But it's you can
buy the complete series on Blu-ray for $29.99.
I mean, there you go, too. You got those options. So, anyway, Mummies Alive. That's a fun one. Check it out. This next one I remembered, and I didn't remember it until I saw it here for this blog post. I'm curious for you. Do you remember the incredible Crash Test Dummies?
Yes, I do remember them. I had a car. I had like a red car, I think. I had a few of them. And they were fun to play with and destroy, but not fun to put back together.
No, they were really hard to put back together. Full disclosure, I never owned these as a kid, but I had friends that did. There was one particular Crash Test Dummy toy that I always wanted. I never had it. It was like a plush with the Velcro limbs that would come off. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yep.
I do remember that.
Oh, God. That's another one. See, that's why I'm going through. I'm so glad we're going through these because I wouldn't have remembered that. Yep.
I remember that, like you said, it was like a wrestling buddy for any wrestling fan. I just remember the wrestling buddies.
Oh yeah.
They were made by Tonka for some reason, but I do remember the Crash Dummy plush that his arms and legs would come off. I had like a car. I didn't have a lot of Crash Dummy toys. I think I had like one or two.
Yeah.
But the messed up thing was there was a Crash Dummy dog. And
really?
It was like the legs would go out, so it literally was supposed to look like roadkill. It was
God,
terrible.
That's terrible. Yeah.
It was terrible.
That is awful.
It was,
okay.
It is, but I had a few, very, very few, one or two things. Maybe, I may have gotten those as gifts from folks that didn't really know what to buy me, but I had them and I liked them.
Well, they look cool, man. They had the bright colors and they just looked fun. Like honestly, you know what I could have used them for is like fodder for my Power Rangers or my Turtles. Like they look like almost like a Putty Patrol type of, villain where like you could just beat them up in mass and they fall apart. So yeah, what could be any better, So in fact, didn't they have, speaking of like the Putty Patrol, didn't they have putties that were the Zed putties that if you push their chest, their limbs would spring off? Did you ever have one of those?
Yes. I did, but when you spring it off and a leg goes into like,
oh, they go far.
An air vent, like, oh, now I got a putty with one leg.
That's okay. He's Gimpy the putty,
So do you want me to also maybe give the price guide for these? Because I just pulled up original 4 sealed Crash Dummies from 1991 are going on eBay for $160.
That's actually not bad. I mean, I'm not saying I would spend that kind of money on it.
Oh, there's a car I had. The
See?
vintage 1991 Tyco Crash Dummies car.
Yeah.
It's red, and apparently it's going for $65 loose with a wheel missing.
That's not...
Probably because everything
crashed
went kaput when you hit the button, and it would go flying into your kid. It's like, oh, it's gone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, good stuff. All right.
It is.
Next one. This is so according to this blog post, this is an action figure line. I could go either way with this because they're not really articulated action figures. Starting lineup.
Oh, if you want, I can go down to the garage and bring up an entire bin.
Yeah, right. Oh, I know you have a ton of them. Yeah.
A ton? My dad just every goalie that came out, like I need to get the goalie, so I have like every goalie. Every player in the Yankees, every player in the Rangers, and the thing is, they did not age well with their looks, and they did not age. They aged even worse with the pricing because every garage sale I've ever had in my life, they're out there for like $2 or $3, and nobody wants them. Nobody wants them.
Well, you can't really play with them. They're statues. I mean, that's literally, which now it's funny as adults, especially for collectors, that's what people like. You have statues of stuff, but like nobody, you're right. Like they were popular, I guess, until they weren't. And then people just kind of forgot about it, which is, I guess, why they're on this list here.
What killed them was McFarlane, the guy that made Spawn.
Yeah.
So Spawn was always, and that might be on this list. Actually, if it's not, it should be. Spawn was one of the first super articulated, detailed, like kids could play with it, but older kids could get it and just kind of like put it on their shelf kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then McFarlane started to make sports figures. So once McFarlane came out, forget it. Starting lineup was done.
Yeah, because McFarlane figures are always such a good quality. In fact, you mentioned Spawn. I did have a Spawn action figure. They were great.
Mm-hmm. They were.
They made some, and McFarlane Toys to this day still makes very high quality stuff. Like that's especially for
They make the sports guys a lot less than they used to, but they're still made and they look exactly the same. They really didn't have to change much.
No, they got it right the first time. I think they were great. So, all right, next on the list, this is one that I had no idea existed. Let's see if it triggers something for you. Captain Simeon and the Space Monkeys.
No idea.
Not at all. That was 96, 97, so it's not even like it was early 90s. This was back when we would have been watching cartoons, and it was, I think, maybe 1 or 2 seasons. So it was it's an Earth monkey named Captain Simeon, who's blasted into space in the 1960s. His crew of space primates had to unveil the evil Nebula's plan to enslave the galaxy and restore peace. It was like Planet of the Apes sci-fi type stuff. And
so this is available on DVD and Blu-ray, the complete season, but Extreme Ghostbusters isn't, so go figure with that.
Go figure.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But does this trigger anything for you? No idea. Okay.
No, it looks like it's made from the same people or studio that made the Mighty Ducks series, just by the way the characters look and the way they're designed. Like the size.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I could find. I don't see who made these ones, so I couldn't tell you as far as which toy company. Oh no, it's Mattel. There it is, Mattel.
It says 96 to 99, so it was on for a little bit.
Oh, I guess maybe. No,
No,
yeah,
only
I don't know.
97. Excuse me.
That's what I'm saying.
97.
Yeah, it's like 1 or 2 seasons. So, all right, next one on the list. Absolutely remember this. I did not have the toys, but my friend did. I actually might have had one of the toys. Now that I think about it, Small Soldiers. Remember that movie?
I do. I don't think I had any of the figures, but I definitely remember seeing it.
Yeah,
and just I could picture it. I didn't have a lot of Army guys. Well, we didn't even talk about GI Joes. That could be.
That's 80s.
I'll tell you.
I guess they were 90s too.
I'll tell you what. GI Joe is probably the most resurgent toy I see at collectible stores and Comic Cons right now.
Like the small
There
ones.
is anything just across the board. The old ones from before we were born, the ones when we were kids with Sergeant Slaughter, and like Hasbro's remaking them now about the size of the Power Rangers Lightning Collection.
Yeah,
they're everywhere. I see them at Target. I see them at Walmart. I see them at Ollie's. I see them at collectible stores. I see them at Comic Con. Everywhere. So it's a big resurgence, and it's interesting because there's nothing really coming out with them. Like they had the G.I. Joe movies about 10 years ago, but the Rock was in one. But now there's nothing coming up, but the toys are seeing a resurgence. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not in the loop with that, but
I mean, I know they've tried, I think, making like animated series and stuff, but it never really took off, I think. And again, it's been a while, so I don't know. But you're right. Yeah, it's one of those it's interesting that is seeing resurgence without like a full media kind of franchise running lot, alongside it with the toys. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but I just want to go back to Small Soldiers for a second because it's one of those movies where, have you seen it as an adult or only as a kid? Like, have you watched it recently?
No, I haven't seen it as an adult.
So as a kid, it's great, fun movie, toys. It's like literally like if Toy Story toys were evil, or not evil, but whatever. Like this, that's what this
Aggressive.
is. Aggressive. There you go. That's a good. So like you got these two factions, they're fighting against each other, but it's not like they're like they come to life like magically. It's like they literally have these like smart AI chips put in them that make them like sentient almost, which is it's stupid and silly and fun. But as an adult, it's just so funny because there's so many quotable moments that you don't think about, like things that go over your head as a kid. Like there's this one line, and I don't know why it makes me laugh so much now. Back in the day, I didn't pay attention to it, but now there's a scene where Phil Hartman, he plays the really annoying neighbor. He's like this rich yuppie neighbor, not a yuppie because he's got whatever. And so they're sitting there watching TV. And it was, he just says this so totally randomly. He just goes to his wife, I think World War II was my favorite war. And I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, well, that's what I'm saying. As a kid, I'm like, oh, whatever. Okay, I guess that's what adults talk about. I don't know. But now as an adult, I'm like, you would never say that, Nick. Who has a favorite war? That's pretty messed up to have a favorite war. You know what I mean?
Wouldn't you as an adult say your favorite war is a war that doesn't happen, bud?
There it is. Yeah, that's what you should say. Anything but that, and you're kind of a psycho. So anyway, it's one of those lines that just has stuck with me over the years, and it's funnier every time I hear it.
Dumb. Yeah, it is a dumb line.
I think World War II is my favorite war. Oh God, I miss
unless he's one of those people that watch the History Channel. Here's World War II in color.
Maybe. I mean, I will say
thing happens, same result.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, Small Soldiers.
New
great
footage found. Oh, we found more footage of troops coming out of the trenches. How exciting!
There it is. All right, next one here, and this one actually, I funnily enough was looking up the other day because I was trying to think of it because I had pictured it in my head. I'm like, what were those called again? Tell me if you remember these. If not, they're from the early '90s. They were called the Trash Bag Bunch. Does that sound familiar?
Yes, I do.
You do remember that? Oh,
I
yes.
do.
You had the little plastic bags. You throw them in the water, and then they would dissolve, and then you had the figure inside. It was like a mystery grab.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Oh my God.
It's crazy. I haven't thought about that, and probably since the last time I did it, which was at this point probably 30-something years ago.
So we had those in my house. So my mom probably just bought a big lot of them, like unopened, like probably on clearance somewhere because I don't think they sold very well. They were only around for like a year, but we used to have haircut surprises. Do you know what that is? Is that a thing that you grew up with?
No, what's that?
So
When you get your
basically,
haircut, you got a toy.
yes, if we sat through our haircut and didn't pitch a fit, because we had a lot of hair growing up, you wouldn't know it now, obviously, but back in the day, we had a lot of hair. And my mom would cut her hair by hand with scissors. So it would take well over an hour usually to cut our hair. So you're talking about hyperactive kids with, ADHD tendencies, undiagnosed, but like probably had to sit still for an hour with her with scissors. Otherwise, she would totally mess up her hair. So yeah, we got aptly rewarded with haircut surprises. Every time we did a haircut, she would go up to the closet and grab a toy out for us. And we had a ton of these toys because they were small, they were easy, they were quick, you know what I mean? And they were cool. So there's one here. I'm looking at a picture of this blog post. And again, thank you so much to 90stoys.com. One of the ones on the picture here is the first one I ever remember opening, and I don't know the character's name, but it was this little green monster, and his arms were like claws, like one claw, and then he had a bunch of eyeballs in his mouth. It looked like Slimer with like claws and giant teeth almost, and a bunch of eyeballs. That was the first one I ever owned. But anyway, I'm so excited that you remember that. I figured that would be one for sure that you would not have remembered.
It's a very faint memory, but...
Yeah.
Yes, I think I had like one or two, and I don't remember what they are. But I remember, like you said, you put them in the water.
Yep,
and they dissolve.
And it was like the first, it was basically loot boxes before loot boxes. You didn't know what you're getting because you get those all the time now. They have toys now. Like the whole appeal of it is you don't know what's in it, right? And like you're like trying to collect like minifigures for Lego, whatever it is. I think it's kind of a scam, to be honest with you. I don't like that.
Oh, it definitely is.
For collectors. But anyway, all right. Next one on the list here. I'm really enjoying this. Is called Cyborgs. Ever heard of Cyborgs?
Cyborgs.
They were literally like robot wild boar hybrids. I'm even looking at pictures, and one of them maybe looks familiar, but I don't remember these at all. And they were only around for a year.
I mean, I know Toys R Us is, for the most part, kind of closed down, but were we pumping out a lot of toys in the 90s compared to the 80s and the 2000s?
I feel like now toys are very like risk averse, so like they're only going to put stuff out that's based off of a well-known franchise.
What the hell is this?
I don't know. It looks like, again, like a Ninja Turtles knockoff. They fought
it
these
looks
bad
like
guys.
Bebop.
It does. It looks like Bebop, like in the future, in space. It's what they all look like. So yeah, there you go. All right, don't remember that one at all. This next one, however, I absolutely do remember because I had one of these figures from my birthday, and there was another. This figure also made an appearance on one of my favorite movies from a kid, and we'll talk about that in a second. Skeleton Warriors. Do you remember them?
No, I don't.
So I had one skeleton. I actually had two Skeleton Warriors figures. I take it back. I have two. And they were like basically like these mystical warrior, medieval, cyberpunk themed skeleton characters. And I remember the one I had. I can't remember his name. I don't remember any of the names. But it had like I thought this was the coolest thing. It had like a detachable, like metal robotic jaw, lower jaw that would move up and down like Jaws from James Bond. And he had like a cybernetic like arms and legs, but it was a skeleton. That's all it was.
Mm-hmm. I see the toys now.
Yeah. Did you have any of those? Does those ring any bells to you?
No, they don't.
Okay.
But man, you know what's weird? Like these toys probably hit the bargain bin when we were kids.
Yeah, that's where I probably got them.
These are expensive now, especially these really obscure ones. Mm-hmm. These Skeleton Warriors figures are going for $45 to $50.
Yeah, it's crazy because nobody bought them. Like, I mean, it's like they didn't make a lot of them. So anyway, I thought
they look cool. Now that's something you could take to be a Turtles or Power Ranger villain,
and I absolutely did. I guarantee you that's what I did. So it was
Do you know what he looks like? And I don't know the name of the character because I'm not a huge Killer Instinct fan, but Killer Instinct has that skeleton guy.
That's right. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the game either, but you're right. So if you're listening to this and you're a Killer Instinct fan, you know who we're talking about.
Yes.
But as I said, one of them, so there's a picture of one. He's got like 6 arms. Are you seeing that one on the screen right now?
Yes, I do see that one. Yep.
So that one I remember was featured. I was wanting it because I saw it in stores. I thought it looked really cool. He was featured in the movie The Indian in the Cupboard. Did you ever see that movie?
Yes, I did. And actually, do you know who makes these figures?
Oh, who is it? It's not Mattel.
It's Playmates.
Playmates.
So they probably were the same size as Ninja Turtles.
Yep. So that's probably why
And they came out in 94.
I remember, a lot of my toys were similar size. Most of them were made by Playmates now that I think about it, because they made a lot of stuff. And again, this one, I think there's a cartoon that came out in like the early 90s, 94, 95 maybe. So check that out. It's wild. Good stuff, man. Yeah, no, I thought that was kind of cool. Like just these different, any you can think of that like you're not remembering until now from this discussion?
I had like I don't know if they were called battle trolls or something like that. They were like Wishnick trolls, but they were had like armor and stuff
I had
like
one,
them.
Had blue hair and he had a yellow. He was like, it looked like the Terminator almost. Like half of his skin was ripped off, and so it was like a yellow robotic half face. Oh shit, I remember that. Wow.
I had that. I had another one where his hair was like half black, half green.
Okay.
And he looked like a punk rock biker dude. I remember those.
Oh, do you remember, again, another one from my YouTube video of the knockoffs. Do you remember Stone Protectors?
I was just about to say that.
Literally
those verbatim. I remember watching your video going Stone Protectors. And here's the thing. I had no idea what the name of that show was.
Yeah.
But I remember I had that figure.
Yeah.
I remember... I had some I'm trying to think about the random things I had. Like I remember I had Darkwing Duck figures.
Yeah. Okay.
And I had the dude, the electrical shock dude, and you would flip your finger in the back and he actually shot out sparks. Like legitimately shot out sparks. Safe. Yeah. I don't remember the name of the character, but he had like a plug on his head. That was cool. Trying to think what else, because there were times there was just like you said, you would just go to a toy store and you were going there for the big boys, and maybe you found something that caught your eye that was on clearance, or somebody got it for you on clearance. Jeez, there was a lot.
Yeah, man.
There was a lot of stuff.
So and again, I wanted to kind of go through that blog post because there's so many hidden gems that I saw in there. They're like, I got to share this because I feel like there's other people that are going to remember this stuff. Mm-hmm. I remember, like, did you ever, so like just going back to playing with the toys themselves and having, the stories and the adventures and what have you. Like, did you have a particular area of your house that you would set the figures up in mostly, or was it really just wherever you were?
When I was very good.
Well, I was going to say, like, for example, did you always only play with them inside, or did you take them outside?
I don't think I ever took them out. Very rarely did I take them outside. Okay. I used to set up in the living room when I was a kid. When I got a little bit older, I would just play in my bedroom. God bless my parents. There'd be toys in the living room, but I had to pick them all up always.
Yep.
But mostly inside the house. I didn't take them outside, or like I didn't abuse my toys either.
You were good. Yeah. See, we beat up our toys, like a lot of broken limbs and stuff like that for ours.
Yeah. Like I remember when I had my wrestling figures, the Hasbro ones, the small plastic ones, I kept my matches relatively like normal. Like a guy went on the top off the top rope, I would actually make him jump like normally off the top rope. I remember friends would be like, they would take their hands and be like, oh, like, the guy would go like
slam them down and
5 feet above the ring. I'm like, no, he's got to jump outwards. Like Macho Man doesn't get 10 feet up in the air. He like jumps outward. Yeah, I was.
You were that
kid,
guy. You were the stickler. Yeah.
Yeah, like no, he doesn't. Yokozuna doesn't do a moonsault. Let's not do that. I was weird like that. But with with them, I was very realistic. But with other things, I would just do whatever I felt like. And Power Rangers and the bad guys would become good guys, and Turtles would meet Batman and Spider-Man, and all this other stuff would be fun.
So a big part of the action figures back then were all the little tiny plastic accessories that, make them worth a lot of money these days if you could hold on to them. Nobody ever did, of course. Did you have any accessories that you remember that maybe even were used for other figures totally unrelated? Because I have a few in mind. That's what I'm asking.
I can tell you that I still have, when I opened up my Ninja Turtle box and I said, I'm going to take a few figures to put on display, Michelangelo from the third movie still had the scepter in his hand.
Really?
So I'm like, oh, yes, that's great. Yeah. I do have my original Turtles figures, even though I have them remade in the box. One of them had, I guess it's supposed to be pizza, because everything was brown in the original Turtles.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have what looks like to be a piece of pizza in one of their hands also.
Okay.
A lot of the Power Ranger toys, little accessories, all like the little swords and guns, if I look in the bins, they're still in there.
Okay.
You
You know what I liked? Speaking of which, the Power Ranger figures, at least the ones that I had, I don't know if it was the flip head ones only or whatever, but do you remember that they were cool because when you put there's a lot of figures, if you try to put something in their hands, like either it was hard to get in because the plastic was too hard to like for example, the Ninja Turtles, like to put a sword in Leonardo's hand was like it was really hard to do, but if you could do it, it wasn't going anywhere. A lot of times though, the hands were just like wide open and they wouldn't hold on to whatever you put in there. The Power Rangers figures, do you remember this where they had the little pegs on their palms?
Yes, they did.
And the weapons had the holes, so you could slot it right in there, and it wouldn't go anywhere. And it was awesome.
It was,
and easy to do.
With the flip heads, not only did they have a hole to go into the figure's hands, the other side had another peg. So when you wanted to combine all the weapons, you could take the sword and the axe and everything, and make the whatever it was called, the power cannon. I'm the Power Ranger expert. I can't even.
It's like a power cannon. I think that's what it is. The power gun or something.
Or they would just go, let's put them together. There you go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then you would throw them in order. I do remember that. And then of course they all had the white blaster.
Yep.
Power daggers. Yeah. They had the little holster for their blasters that would go in there next to them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now here's another thing too about action figure. And I'm so sorry guys, we're going all over the place. We weren't really, I did not have a plan for this episode. I just knew I wanted to talk about action figures, but I feel like it's going pretty well. Anyway, the other thing about action figures that like ones that like I would play with over the others is if I could stand them up on their own. Was that ever a thing for you? Like being able to just like make them stand on their own 2 feet?
Not really. Now it is trying to put them on display. You son of a bitch, we stand up.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, White Dino Thunder Ranger, that will not stand up in my display case.
There's so many though that they just won't. And like back in the day, there was like characters like from the Ninja Turtles line in particular. I hated it. Like it was the variants of the main
Shredder.
Well, Shredder was one, but like there was variants of like Leonardo that had like costumes on, but like it would stand like with his toe angled, so like you could never really display him. You know, like he wouldn't stand up straight.
When you were playing with them, you would display them?
No, to take it back. When I was playing with them, like let's say I was setting them up for a scene. Like let's say they're going through a whole line of like foot soldiers to fight, which by the way, that was the other thing too. I never had a foot soldier action figure, so all of my other turtles that weren't being used as the turtles, I made foot soldiers instead. They were just foot soldiers that looked like turtles because
I think.
Well, I had a reason for this. So in the original movie, they wore green like jumpsuits or whatever and had the red headbands. So I'm like, well, they kind of look like the Turtles outfits anyway, so I would use, the Turtles figures. It's like, well, they had the headband and they were green, so it was interchangeable for me. But they were actually
use
black.
Your imagination.
Exactly. That's exactly what I did.
So I actually did get a Technodrome back in the day, but before I did, do you remember color forms?
I do remember color forms. I had color forms.
So I would take like the backgrounds and put it against the wall, and I would put the little color forms as like a background. Then I would have the turtles fighting in front of the Technodrome and stuff like that. So I had to use your imagination.
Yep.
I forgot about color forms. I
had Ninja Turtles color forms. Yeah.
Yep. I had Ghostbusters and I had Ninja Turtle color forms. But going back to like the drones, so to speak, I think every kid wanted multiple foot soldiers, stormtroopers, or putties. Yeah. I never understood. I mean, I guess it probably wouldn't sell, but like as a kid, I wanted to have a bunch. Yeah. I wanted to have a bunch.
That's what I was going to say. And listen, let's make this into a short, for crying out loud. It is a damn shame that a foot soldier, a putty patroller, whatever, was the same price for one figure as any of the other figures. That is a crying shame. Like it's bogus.
You're right, because if they lowered the price on the drone figures to just a little bit less, the parents may have gotten them too. The only way I ever got multiples of a drone is this. So I had a Stormtrooper figure from like 97.
Yep.
And I wanted more, because how could you have one Stormtrooper? You can't.
Yeah, no, you can't.
They made the figure a 2-pack of Han and Luke when they had the Stormtrooper helmets on.
Oh, okay. So there's 2 more.
So I was able to convince my parents, but it's Luke and Han in disguise. but they had helmets to put on. So when I got them home, those helmets went on. They never came off. They were just regular stormtroopers. So I had
and
three
you still
of them.
had Han and Luke anyway for like just the regular
exactly.
figures.
I had a regular Han and a regular Luke.
Yeah,
but I had them in stormtrooper gear and put the helmets on, and there we go. I convinced them to get me 2 more stormtroopers.
You know, it's funny you mentioned Han Solo. I do remember now. I had a Han Solo figure, but I totally didn't realize until this is before I'd seen the movies even. The one I had was not from the original with the vest and the white shirt. I had Hoth Han with the jacket, the leather jacket.
With a jacket. They smell bad.
On the outside. Well, he wasn't wearing that outfit.
Go.
He was wearing his one that he wore for most of the movie. Like I said, the jacket with the white button up.
Got it.
You know, and but I remember we took that figure for a school project. And this, again, I don't know why I remember this. In 5th grade, we had to do projects on one of the 50 states. Did you ever have to do one of those in school where you pick a state and have to come up with like a state bird and, you know, all that stuff?
Yeah, I'm sure I did.
So I did that, and my state was Colorado. And to this day, I remember that. Oh, I'll tell you why I remember that. Because my mom and I came up with the idea of like, why don't we make like a mountain, because it's in the Rocky Mountains. And so we built one out of like cardboard and construction paper and cotton balls. And we're like, well, let's have somebody skiing on it. So I had my little Han Solo action figure. He's wearing a jacket, right? He's ready for cold weather. We literally glued popsicle sticks to his feet and glued toothpicks into his hands. And we had him skiing down the mountain on the side.
All right, I can one up you a little bit. So in middle school, I'm going to say 7th or 8th grade. So you're probably like 12, 13.
Yeah.
You know, kind of starting to get out of things a little bit, perhaps. Unless I'll give a quick story for our wrestling fans. Kevin Owens, you know him. And if you're a wrestling fan, you know him.
Yep.
You don't have to know wrestling to know this story. So Kevin Owens is a big-time wrestler. Has been a world champion. He was telling a story. He's like, yeah, when I had my wrestling figures, you know, I had the music, I had the CDs, which I would do, and I would play the music when the guy was walking to the ring. He's like, but I just wasn't feeling it that day, so I wanted like to shatter something for Steve Austin because his music was shattered. A glass would shatter and his music would start.
Yep.
So Kevin Owens took a ceramic mug and threw it at the wall, and it didn't really shatter. It just kind of stood there. And his dad came home and yelled at him. He's like, "You're 17 years old. Why are you doing this shit?" He's like, 17. I thought I was a late bloomer. I saw playing with them like 13.
Yeah. Well, and it's one thing to play with them, but it's another thing to think it's okay to throw a mug into a wall at 17.
At 17. So 7th grade, we had to design a toy, and I decided to create the Titantron. So in wrestling, it's the stage where the wrestlers come out of. It's it's a metal stage with a big screen. At the time, it was impressive. Now, by no means, with all HD and LED stuff, it's not.
Yeah.
But I took like a baking pan, like a flimsy one, once you get like at like the dollar store.
Yeah.
Popsicle sticks inside of it to like be like stanchions, and just cut out a generic logo from a magazine and put it on something. I don't know, maybe a piece of wood, and there was a little cardboard ramp, and put a little figure on it. I go, there you go. I didn't win most likely to be made because the teachers didn't know what it was, but guess what? They made my toy like a year later.
They absolutely did make the Titantron.
They did come out with the Titantron.
They still make that today. Like that's still part of
I'm sure they do.
Absolutely. It's the coolest, man. Oh, good stuff.
Yes.
I want to go play with action figures now. I don't know about you, but like I love this because
I just gotta go sort them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, go sort through your toys, man. Jeez, that was fun. So because again, it's Christmas time, and it was always my favorite gift to get as a kid. I knew if I was getting an action figure, and you could always tell too, right? Like if you're looking at the packaging.
Oh yeah,
they had a very distinct, almost like a trapezoid shape if you were to look at it from the side, because you had the flat, and then it would kind of diagonal go up and meet in the middle with a flat surface that was the blister packaging.
Yes.
So you always knew what an action figure was wrapped like.
Yeah. Props to moms and dads, especially back then, because I don't know if there's that many action figures kids play with now, but back in the 90s and the 80s, props to moms and dads for wrapping those gifts.
Well, I can tell you one of my sons who likes action figures is getting action figures for Christmas this year, so we will be wrapping action figures.
Is it Street Fighter action figures?
They are not Street Fighter action figures.
Oh, okay.
Those will be. I know
I sent Street Fighter action figures.
You did. You sent Street Fighter action figures for my son, but they will be staying in a gift bag because they're
Okay.
loose figures, but the other ones I might.
They were.
Anyway. But anyway, I digress again. There I go, Steve, on your line again.
That's okay.
So it's it was always my favorite toy to get growing up because there was so much you could do with them. And I used to have this thing that I would do, by the way, where it was like almost like a weird routine tradition where I would take all my turtle figures, I would put on I had a tape that had 2 episodes of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that literally led into the first movie. Like my mom had done she had copied the movie, like recorded the movie on VHS, and then before that recorded 2. And I remember the episodes to this day. The 2 episodes that I have memorized line and verse because I would watch this tape on repeat while I would have my figures out, and then I would try to parallel whatever I was playing with the movie, so that the big fight scene at the end of the movie with Shredder, right? I would try to have that type of showdown with the Turtles versus Shredder on my bed or whatever. I'd like knock him off the bed. That was always my thing. I would reenact it.
I did that, believe it or not, only with Star Wars, not with Power Rangers or Turtles or anything else. The original Star Wars movie, I would take out my figures and I would kind of reenact them.
Yeah,
because I had Luke and Han with the Stormtroopers helmets.
That's right.
That was the reason why.
That's the reason. So thank you to Lou and Nancy for being able to. And that's talking about your parents, obviously, for giving Lou the opportunity to reenact these films. So
yes,
please thank your mom, because I think you know at this point you gotta thank her for it, because yes, I'm thanking my parents for the amazing memories that I had from all these
and trying to find these things.
Yes,
paying for them is one thing, and that's appreciative too.
Yes,
wrapping them is appreciated also, but sometimes they weren't easy to find. Maybe we should touch on that quick. Some of this stuff was not easy to find.
It wasn't.
I know for a fact the Power Rangers, when they came out, forget it. Forget trying to get those things.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yep. You know what specific ones I remember were really hard to get were, do you remember like the 10-inch figures of the Power Rangers that were like super
the
articulated?
first ones they made.
I guess those were the first ones they made, yeah. I had a couple of those. I didn't get them until a little bit later, but I remember because I would always ask for those and I never got them. And yeah, because I would get figures that I didn't know anything about. I still loved them, played with them all the time. But whenever I asked for a specific figure, especially if it was one that I knew was popular, yeah, you're right. Like you said, going out and trying to find those figures, that's not easy to do.
Could you imagine trying to find the Green Ranger when he first came out? No way.
Oh my God, yeah, forget it. Or the Green Ranger, or I'm trying to what are some other figures that would have been hard to find back then? I know Green Ranger was probably a big one.
When I was a kid, the Green Ranger was literally impossible to get. In wrestling, for some reason, Kane was very hard to find when he came out. Oh, geez. I'm trying to think of any turtles that were hard to find.
I know there's some that are worth money now, but they weren't popular back then, but they just
that's why they're worth money.
Exactly, yeah. So they weren't a hot, because you're right. For turtles, I feel like there was never an issue finding the turtles. They made enough. They made plenty of those, I feel, for the most part.
But that's the thing. I remember as a kid with my wrestling figures, when I got the Hasbros, they made Hogan, they made the Warrior, they made Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah.
But they eventually remade them again. It was a repaint, but if you weren't into wrestling when Series 1 came out, by Series 3 and 4, they had re-released those guys, just a different paint job. I remember back in the day, the first wave of Turtles figures was the only wave they ever made of the Turtles without a mustache or a hat or fireman or police officer. It was what, me and you were both into it since the beginning or very early on.
Right. The base figures.
Once if you got into it halfway through, I would really like to have a Donatello that's, not dressed as a magician or something like that.
Well,
and I had the one in disguise. I love that
too.
figure.
He was great, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't you couldn't use him with the other 4 base turtles. It looked weird, right? That's where
the village people.
apparently that's where my imagination stopped working for me, right? Because I could totally imagine other turtle figures as foot soldiers, but God forbid I have to use turtles dressed in weird costumes for whatever I was doing. And it's funny too, because I remember near the end of me playing with these figures, I actually, all 4 of my turtles, none of them were base figures. I lost all of them of my base figures. So
really?
I can tell you exactly my lineup of turtles because I remember it to this day.
Okay.
So my Donatello was... Actually, I take it back. My Donatello and my Michelangelo both were the mutating turtles, where you pop the shell open and flip their heads around and make them baby turtles.
Yes, yes. I had one of those.
Which, by the way, are back in stores now in Target. You can buy them.
I saw those.
Yes. So those were my Donatello and my Michelangelo figures. Okay. And then Raphael and Leonardo were both the same figure line. They were the pop-up head turtles. Do you remember those?
I think I do.
You could push their heads down and they would lock in. You would squeeze their legs and it would pop back up.
They look like that dude from 90 Day Fiance with no neck.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly. Say the neck.
You know
for me,
who I'm
Clark.
talking about? Yeah, I don't know his name, but
yeah. So, but that's the ones and it's funny because to this day, it is sitting in my oldest son's room on a shelf. My Raphael pop-up head that I had when I was a kid.
I did have all 4 of the original turtles. Their weapons were gone.
Yep.
And their
belts.
Belt buckles were gone.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Raph's arms, he had some surgery where that was another thing. If it broke, I didn't get a new one.
No,
my dad, okay, crazy glue.
Yep.
That's it. And his arm or his leg didn't move. Raph got messed up the most. But I was fortunate enough to have those 4, but yeah, I looking back at it, I don't understand why they didn't re-release the original Turtles. And it wasn't like they were only around for 3 years. The Turtles was around for almost
had those
8
figures
years?
for 10 years. They started I'm trying to think, when did they start releasing? No, they did. They released them for their original show in 87 when it came out, and the show ended in 97. So
yeah,
they were making
10
toys
years.
until at least 97. I think they even made some beyond that before the new 2003 series came out.
So did you not get the movie Turtles?
I never did. My friend had them, and I was so jealous because they were so cool looking, and they were rubbery, and they were fun.
They were rubbery.
And he had a super shredder, which was hilarious because he was shorter than the Turtles, but he was just awesome looking. And Splinter was furry.
That was the shredder I used. That's the shredder I used because I didn't like the scoliosis shredder, so I used super shredder.
So I looked it up because if you're listening to this and you remember the original Shredder figure, he had a weird kind of hunched over pose. Supposedly, it was based off of one of the poses he did in the original comics, and that's what it's based off of.
It's a terrible figure.
Why he had the weird spinal protrusions on his back and makes him look all emaciated, that I don't know. I got nothing for you there. But the pose, yeah, and it's funny because like I would use that one. That was my go-to. He was missing his armor by the end. Like that had all fallen off of him except for like maybe one of his claws on his wrist or whatever. Yep. All the other ones popped off. And but he would always pose like that. So I was like, man, well, he looks like he can do some pretty sweet like jumping kicks. Because he could just, lift him up in the air and, kick him in the face. That was his go-to move, right? Oh, God, I remember this other thing, too. So, sorry, we're totally going on another tangent here. But Casey Jones. Remember Casey Jones, right? It's one of my favorite characters from Ninja Turtles.
Yep.
And he was missing his hand for many years. I had, his right hand was gone. I don't know where it went. It's gone.
Lost it in battle.
Yeah, he lost it in battle. I remember for the longest time, I just didn't use a hand for him. And then I found another figure, and God help me, I cannot remember the figure I stole this from, but it was a hand that was roughly the size, and it was a red semi-translucent fist. And I'm like, that'll work. And I literally, the peg, because they came in little pegs,
great.
I popped it on there, never left his hand. So he had it was like, I'd say it wasn't exactly a 1-to-1 fit. It was probably like a 75% reduction in size of a regular hand. So he's got this little tiny midget fist. But I was like, that's his power fist. That's what he punches people in the face with. And I remember using someone else's hand for it. And I cannot remember whose hand that was. I wish I could because that would be amazing.
Though.
Yep.
That's so cool that you did that.
That's ingenuity right there, my friend.
Yeah. Making best of what you got or what you don't got.
Oh, good stuff. All right. Listen, I could talk action figures forever. In fact, I do want to talk. We'll definitely do another figures conversation in the future. There was an article that I wanted to bring up here today, but we'd be going for hours and hours, and I just No, it's worth another episode of basically I found an article of toys from the 90s that are worth way more than you thought they might be now. And if you could like hella expensive to buy now. You've already touched on a couple of them today with some of the figure lines we talked about, but there's even more toys out there that are worth so much money that you may not have realized. So we'll absolutely do a future episode on that here. I just wanted to get it out there today as kind of a general discussion on the joy of action figures. And before we wrap up, Palou, can you think of, I want you to tell me just one. You could have multiple in your head, but give me one action figure that when you got it for a holiday, Christmas, birthday, whatever, that like it was the greatest moment of your life or like in that moment.
Can it be, does it have to be an action figure per se, or can it be like an accessory?
It could be an accessory. Yep. Absolutely.
I was the only kid in school that had the dragon dagger.
You son of a bitch.
That's what everybody says. So here's the thing. It's like if I tell somebody I'm a New York Jets fan, they go, "Oh, I'm sorry." I'm like, nobody died. It's okay.
Right.
But on the flip side, if I say I had the dragon dagger as a kid, even it's all like, wow, really? Because his stuff was so hard to find. So it didn't have the Ranger, didn't have the Zord, but I had the dragon dagger, and I still have it.
Oh, geez. How much is that worth?
I don't think it's worth that much because it was played with quite a lot. It was played with a lot, but they've remade it and where it came out by Hasbro and Bandai, and it's like prop quality if it was used in a show. But I love that. That was probably my favorite thing.
Oh, geez, son of a bitch. Okay, now
what
I'm
about
jealous.
you? What did you get?
So I got it for my birthday. It was my 5th birthday. I remember this very specifically. I remember the chair I was sitting in the room of the house that I was sitting in of my house when I got this figure for my birthday. It was a giant-sized movie version of Michelangelo. Do you remember those?
So I had the giant-sized cartoon version of Michelangelo, which have been remade and they're in the stores.
I have them. I have all 4 of them actually.
Oh, you do? Okay, I have so when you look at Mikey, remember that's the one I had.
That's the one you had. Yep. So anyway, so this was the movie version, and I loved him so much. You know why I loved him? He was cool. He's huge. It looked like, oh, this is what it'd be like to hang out with the actual turtles from the movie because it looked like the detail was there, you know. But my favorite thing about him was that he came with a nunchuck that had like a string.
Were they orange?
They were orange nunchucks, but like an actual string between them, so you could swing them around like nunchucks. And so that's what I did. I would use them like if we were playing Ninja Turtles, like us, like my friends, I would bust that out and be Michelangelo.
I had the same exact thing, and you know what's really weird is I vividly remember like unboxing him outside of the house for some reason and like putting him on the trunk of my parents' car to see how big he was. I don't know why, but that's core memory.
Okay, there we go. I love that figure so much to the point where now sitting in my son's room, my parents sent it down to me. I have that giant Michelangelo in my house still.
That Michelangelo, not a remake.
No, not a repurchase. The actual one from my childhood is sitting in my son's room right now.
And you know what the ironic thing is? I have almost all my Ninja Turtle and almost all of my toys from my childhood. You don't have that Michelangelo.
No. Oh, man. I wonder where it went.
It's probably that one.
The only thing he's missing, I mean, the nunchuck, obviously, but the only other thing he's missing that I'm like, to the point where I've considered buying it on eBay just to make it complete is the bandana came off on the back. It was like a detachable for some reason. Mm-hmm. So if I ever find that, I'm not kidding, I may buy the bandana just to have it complete for the first time in 30 years.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Makes sense.
Oh, man. Good stuff. All right, we gotta stop now. We could go forever, and I don't want to go forever on this because I want to do this again in the future. All right, man. Good stuff. Appreciate you coming back on here. We are getting that much closer to Christmas. This is going to be coming out, a couple weeks before Christmas, I guess. So figured it was the perfect time, again, to do an action figures episode. If there were any toys from your childhood that, if you're listening to this and you want to reach out to us and share them with us, I'd love to shout you out on a future episode. Make sure you're reaching out to us on Facebook at Generation S Podcast or on Instagram at Generation S Podcast. Connect with me, give me a follow. I'd love to connect with you on there and chat. It's so much fun to kind of just reminisce about this stuff. So if you have core memories you want to share with me and unlock some core memories from us, send us your messages, guys. Give us a follow on there. And hey, listen, if you enjoyed this episode and you really want other people to experience it, share this episode out. Share the show out. We are still growing, and I would love to get the word out there. We've got a ton of episodes in the backlog now. This is like episode 70, I think. So there's plenty to get through for new listeners. Yeah, absolutely, man. It's crazy. We've been doing this for almost a year and a half now, and it's so much fun. And I always get excited this time of year, too, because this was always my favorite time of year growing up as a kid. This and Halloween, probably a tie. But from like a toy perspective, obviously, I've just always loved Christmas time because I always got the coolest stuff. So, Lou, thank you so much for coming on, man. As always, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Don't thank me. Thank all the moms and dads.
Yes, and thank you to all of our parents for scouring store shelves in the 90s to try to find...
fighting people and...
Yes, and...
not buying bootlegs and all that stuff.
Yes, although, listen, there's something to be said about bootleg figures because God knows I certainly had plenty of those myself. So
I did too.
That I think we should do an episode on that in the future too, is bootleg figures.
Well, there is, depending on the time of this video, there has either been a recent release or there will be a very soon release of bootleg Power Ranger figures.
Courtesy of our Generation S YouTube channel, and courtesy of Lou.
Yes.
So yes, absolutely. So make sure you're on the lookout for that as well. So give us a follow on YouTube. We do some pretty cool stuff on there every week. And yeah, and one more thing. I always forget to ask this, but if you want to support the show, we don't have a Patreon yet, but there are ways you can support the show financially, and that's through merch. Make sure you check out our merch page. It's linked in the description of this episode if you're looking for a cool t-shirt or a notebook. Or I think those are the big things I've got up there. Some shirts,
coffee
and some
mugs.
Oh, and I've got some coffee mugs. You're absolutely. Thank you, Lou. If you're looking for a good coffee mug, we've got a ton of different logo variations of Generation S. Whatever kind of strikes your fancy, we've got it. Check it out, and please support the channel if you can. And if you do, send us a picture of you with the merch. I'd be happy to shout you out and tag you on Instagram as well. So that's going to do it for us this week, guys. Happy almost holidays, Christmas, whatever. We're getting there, getting close. And we'll talk to you soon.
Goodbye.